SG 18, Discovery of Lord Sri Chaitanya's birth site. The discovery of Lord Sri Chaitanya's birth site in 1887, when the Thakura was 49 years old, he began to reflect on his retirement. He revealed his mind in his autobiography. I recovered fully from my head ailment, and I constantly studied the devotional literatures. Because of associating with devotees I became more renounced. I thought, I have spent my days in a futile way. I have not accomplished much. I have not been able to obtain even a little taste of service to Sri Satchidananda Swarupa Radha Krishna. Therefore, I will retire, and taking my pension I will find some little place in the groves of Vraja near the bank of the Yamuna and perform bhajana with my friend, Bhakti Bringa, until the end of my life. 1887. The Thakura was jubilant, but he was then overwhelmed by high fevers. He writes, "How shall I speak of my misfortune? Returning home in joy, I became anxious because a horrible fever came on. It did not subside. Collector Toynbee arrived and expressed a desire to postpone my substitution. But then I thought, I'll live or I'll die, but I will go to Krishnanagar." The Thakura received sick leave and proceeded to Navadvipa. Thus, in my bedridden condition I chose to go. My wife and Mahendra Mama went with me. There was a little difficulty on the way, but in the ecstasy of going to Navadvipa I felt untroubled. The Thakura began to perform a few minor duties in Krishnanagar, but soon collapsed. A Dr. Russell informed him that if he did not take medicine and a proper convalescence diet he would die. The Thakura had taken only milk for 45 days. From time to time I thought, many obstacles are a good sign. Dr. Russell prescribed quinine, that chapatis be eaten every day, and other medicines. During the Christmas break the Thakura took a train to Navadvipa with his wife. He writes, "Upon arriving there and surveying the land in all four directions, the hairs on my body stood on end. Proceeding to the Rani Dharmasala, the Thakura arranged for an offering to be cooked for Lord Chaitanya. He then took grains for the first time in many days and commented, 'Since my birth I had not eaten such vegetarian food.' After this, the Thakura gradually regained his strength and began to come to Navadvipa every Saturday to search out the site of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's birth. However, most of the local people had little interest in or actual knowledge of the holy sites of Navadvipa, and the Thakura became a little discouraged. Most of the local inhabitants expressed the opinion that the site of Lord Chaitanya's birth was in Navadvipa, but the Thakura was not convinced. Another theory was that the actual site had been lost under the shifting path of the Ganges. Still not satisfied, he continued to try to establish where the authentic birthplace was located. One Saturday evening, the Thakura was sitting on the roof of the Rani Dharmasala in Navadvipa with his third son, Kamal Prasad, and a friend who was a clerk. It was 10 o'clock and very dark, as the sky was covered with clouds. The Thakura gives his account. Across the Ganga, in the northern direction, I saw a large mansion flooded with light. When I asked Kamal about this, he confirmed that he had seen it also. When I asked the clerk, he said, "I didn't see anything." I was utterly amazed by that. When I looked carefully at that area in the morning from the roof of Rani's house, I saw a palm tree located there. Inquiring from others about the place, they said it was known as Baladi, which was near the ruins of the old fort and kingdom of Laxman Sen. Upon inquiring of various persons, the Thakura learned that adjacent to that place was the large pond of King Balal Sen from which the town got its name, and aside from that there was nothing of importance. The following Saturday he went to Baladi, where at night he again had a wonderful vision. He spent the next day wandering all over the site. The elderly locals told him that this was indeed the location of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's birth. They pointed out an extensive mound covered with tulsi plants as the actual site of his appearance. In order to substantiate his growing conviction, the Thakura began to conduct an investigation utilizing old manuscripts of the Chaitanya Bhagavata. Bhakti Ratnakara Narahari Sarakar Thakura's Navadvipa Pariakarmapaddat, as well as antique maps of the district. In particular, he found an old map from the time of Ganga Govinda Singh, who was the named one of the Khalsa and founder of the Pakpura Raj family which flourished in the latter part of the 18th century. The name Sri Malayapura was found on the map to indicate the site of what became known as Baladi. He ascertained a good deal about the different villages of the area from his research with the manuscripts and maps and from the local villagers as well. He found to his great astonishment that the town on the western banks of the Ganges, now called Navadvipa, was actually a place of less than 100 years standing, and that there were still people living there who declared that in their youth they had moved to the new town from the old site at the Laldi. He also found that this town of Navadvipa could not possibly be the site of Lord Chaitanya's appearance, because Lord Chaitanya had appeared on the eastern bank of the Ganges. Furthermore, the elderly villagers of Balaldia even called the area Malayapura. Then, while reading the Bhakti Ratnakara, the Thakura found the following verse which confirmed his discovery beyond a doubt: Navadvipamadaye Malayapuraname Sthapanyathaya John Milangaura Chandra Bhagavan. In the center of Navadvipa there is a place called Malayapura. At this place the Supreme Lord, Gaurachandra, took his birth, 1890. After the discovery of the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya, Srila Jagannatha Dasa Babaji Maharaja and Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakura spent some time worshipping the Lord there. Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakura's son, Lulita Prasad, relates that one of the Thakura's sons was suffering from a skin disease, and that Srila Babaji Maharaja told him to lie down at the side of the Lord's birth. The boy did so, and was cured by the next day. Later, when Jagannatha Dasa Babaji returned to his place of bhajana at Kuliyaya, he requested Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakura, who was eager to render some service to him, to build a solid covered veranda, so that the Vaishnavas who came to see him would have a pleasant place to sit and chant. The Thakura immediately complied with that order, to his guru's full satisfaction. In Krishnanagar the Thakura's health deteriorated. He was afflicted with severe tonsillitis. He received 2 months' leave, and during that time he purchased the place where he would write many books and perform hours of bhajana, Sri Surabhi Kunja. He then traveled with his family by horse and carriage and visited Olagram, the place of his birth and childhood. After visiting his boyhood home, he spoke to the government officer, Mr. Edgar, who had helped him get a post in Krishnanagar, about transferring to a place where he could regain his health. In 1889 he moved to Netrikona, from there to Tangail and from Tangail to Burdwan. During his stay in Burdwan, the Thakura sometimes suffered from fevers and had difficulty breathing. When he recovered, he resumed his duties. While in Burdwan he performed kirtana with the Vaishnavas of Amalajora, headed by Kshetra and Vipina Babus, and noted their strong devotion to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The Thakura composed poems like Shaka Sharna, which described in 13 songs the disappearance of Sri Srivasa's son during Lord Chaitanya's kirtana, and his friends would sing them. All the while he was working on his books, despite all difficulties, 1890 saw the publication of Om Namah Sutram, a work comprised of 130 Sanskrit sutras describing the absolute truth, with his commentary, Laghu Bhashaya, together with Bengali translations of the codes. He also published the Sri Navadvipa Dharma Mahatmayam, which comprised 18 chapters written in Bengali verse describing Jiva Goswami's tour of the land of Navadvipa in the company of Lord Nityananda. This was called the Pariyakramakanda. A second volume of this work called Pramanakanda was also published, and it was a collection of Sanskrit verses glorifying the holy land of Navadvipa, gathered by him from the Vedic literature and arranged in 5 chapters. In March and April of that year he got the chance to tour various holy places, including the birthplace of Vrindavana Dasa Thakura, and visiting Gadrumadvipa. He had a picnic with his sons. On May 19 he took darshan of Srila Jagannatha Dasa Babaji in Kuliyaya with great delight. From Burdwan he was transferred briefly to Raniganj and then back again to Dinajpur in 1891. In 1891 he published his Bhagavad Gita with the Sanskrit commentary of Srila Baludeva Vidayabhushana called Gita Bhushana, as well as his own Bengali commentary, Vedvedranjana.